I haven't kept up with new anime releases for a few years now. I only know what's popular in the anime community through osmosis from all the fan art and recommended YouTube videos that show up in my feed. But it's gotten to the point where I haven't watched any of the new shows that everyone's raving about. And not too long ago, I had a heartbreaking revelation about my identity as an anime fan. In a place I never expected. Finally, some relaxed time. Let's watch some YouTube. Oh look, new Stray Kids interview. This should be a fun watch. And there's no way that me watching this video will somehow result in an ironic anecdote I'll use in a future YouTube video I should have no present conception of. She lied as naturally as she breathed.
아니야 보자.
아니야 보자.
만약에
Oh god. Am I that far behind on new anime series? So behind that even one of my favorite idol groups is more caught up than I am? How do they have the time? If they have the time, then what's my excuse? Can I even call myself an anime fan anymore? The music artists I follow watch more anime than I do, for crying out loud. I'm a fraud. And that's how I realized I stopped watching anime. The new ones, at least. The last new anime I remember tuning in for was My Next Life as a Villainess, which was first released 2 years ago. And my feelings were pretty lukewarm. I enjoyed it, but I only watched the first season. Looking back, the last time I truly fell in love with a new anime was when Kaguya-sama Love is War aired the year before. And the amount of anime I've been watching has been dwindling more and more each year. Tracing it back, it seems like this downward trend started around 2017. But why? Originally, I just thought it was the natural order of things. I had moved on. I watched anime almost religiously for over a decade. That's a lot of content. And people's interests change. I must have just gotten bored. And a lot of people around my age and older seem to feel similarly, including some of the people who helped foster my love of anime in the first place. However, I realized that in my case at least, that line of thinking was plain wrong. I hadn't given much thought to my growing disinterest in anime, so I chalked it up to maturing and finding new interests. But there actually is a genuine reason as to why I grew more apathetic to the medium as a whole. And I'd like to talk about it today, because I'm sure I'm not alone. Hello, I'm Rosie Vision. I like to take a closer look at entertainment through rose-tinted glasses, because we all deserve some magic in our life. So, what's the real reason I stopped keeping up with new anime? I won't waste your time. In my case, the answer was simple. A lack of shoujo series. Seems kind of anticlimactic, and not that big a deal in the grand scheme of things. But the more I thought about it after watching YouTube videos covering the decline of shoujo anime over the years, the more it made sense. Everything started to click into place. I'll link the videos I watched if you'd like to hear more about how shoujo has declined recently. In this video, I'll be talking about it from a different angle. I'll be looking at how this change in shoujo's availability has affected the content I, and many others, consume. But first, a quick explanation as to what shoujo is, and my personal experience with it. Shoujo is simply a term commonly used to describe manga and anime that is marketed towards young girls. Josei is within the same realm, but is instead targeted towards women. For sake of simplicity, I'll be lumping the two together. but they are slightly different. Common elements you'll find in a shoujo series are a female protagonist, a focus on romance, bishi boys galore, as well as highly character-driven narrative. Some series do deviate from these elements, but in general, almost all shoujo tends to have more of an emotional center compared to series that are marketed otherwise. And the art style tends to look pretty similar too, with extra emphasis on the eyes. The actual genre of shoujo series can vary wildly. One could be a dark gothic thriller, whereas another could be a politically charged, action-packed historical fantasy. There's really no end to the possibilities. However, in general, shoujo is most commonly associated with the high school setting. Let's be real though, that's the case for a lot of other anime too. But as we established earlier, there's many cases in shoujo where the scope is much, much grander. I grew up watching almost exclusively shoujo series. Like a lot of anime fans, I started my journey with Sailor Moon. So naturally, I gravitated towards more magical girl series. However, there was a time when I consulted the most trustworthy place on planet Earth to get good recommendations on what to watch next. The internet. And by the internet, I mean such credible and reputable sources as Yahoo Answers and Quora. How could these sites possibly steer me wrong? I was 12. I didn't know better at the time. Or maybe I did. Honestly, I think I did. But I was desperate and I had no one else to ask. I still remember what I searched for to this day. Good anime for 12-year-olds. And not only is that really embarrassing to admit, but it did not go well for me. Who would have guessed? I put my faith in one random commenter and went along with their suggestion. Full Metal Alchemist. Now, that might be a fine and well enough suggestion for most people at that age, but not for me. I'm a total scaredy cat. I admit that. Also, I get squeamish watching gory scenes to this day. I wish it was something that I could get over because there's so many great shows and movies I'm just too afraid to watch. But that's just the way I am, and when I was 12, it was a lot worse. In the very first episode, I'm sure you can guess the scene, I had to turn off the show because I was so taken back and horrified by what I had just witnessed. And yes, I'm now aware that things get much worse in the show, but I was still a kid back then, and a natural-born chicken to boot. From that day forth, I vowed never to repeat the same mistake again. So from then on, I watched exclusively shoujo series in order to avoid another FMA incident. Yes, there are graphic and horrifying shoujo series as well, but they were a lot easier for me to avoid. I did eventually branch out and watch a few shonen series like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Death Note when I was a little older and a little braver. But for the most part, I watched nothing but shoujo for 7 years. So I consumed a lot of what shoujo has to offer. And I loved it. Yes, there are recurring tropes, but that's the same for any type of anime you watch. There are also tons of genuinely amazing shoujo series I think could easily have great universal appeal if people gave them a chance. So, as you might imagine, I grew quite an attachment to the shoujo style of storytelling. I love seeing characters grow as a result of their relationship with others, albeit romantic or not. And something that separates shoujo romance from most other romance anime is the way it handles the characters. Both romantic leads tend to get more individual focus and growth as people. It's as much one lead's emotional journey as it is the other's, and the romance usually takes center stage while slowly feeding the audience crumbs of the emotional bond between the two. This is why I believe the last anime series I grew attached to was Kaguya. The series may not be shoujo, but the romance is handled in a very similar way. However, I can't quite say the same for other romance series that have taken off in recent years. They just don't quite scratch the same itch that shoujo does, even Kaguya to an extent. And the more shoujo anime began to dwindle, the less anime I watched in general. But how do I know that I didn't just outgrow shoujo? Or maybe it's possible I just became disinterested in anime as a whole. Two plausible theories. However, I believe neither are true. We'll start with the second theory. Did I lose interest in anime? No, not really. While I will admit I watch very little compared to before, I still enjoy it to this day. I recently rewatched several of my favorite anime in the past year, and I had a blast. I just finished rewatching Death Note for the third time. And I didn't just rewatch shows either. I also watched a series I never saw before. I was recommended by one of my viewers to give Revolutionary Girl Utena a go, so I did. And they were right to suggest it. I enjoyed it very much. I can't say the entire experience was pleasant, since the series has an unsettling psychological thriller aspect to it, but I couldn't stop watching. And I got through it relatively fast considering it has nearly 40 episodes. It's the longest series, in terms of episodes, that I've seen in years. And it reminded me of the time when I first fell in love with anime. It was a great feeling. So I think it's safe to say that I haven't outgrown anime based on my watch history. You could make the argument that I just don't like the new stuff. I guess that's fair enough. But I suspect that's because the type of anime I loved watching growing up just doesn't come out nearly as often anymore. I loved Utena because it filled the hole in my heart left behind by the absence of classic shoujo titles. And most of the shows currently airing just don't give me that feeling. So whenever I feel like watching anime, I usually just end up watching an older shoujo. But what about my first theory? Did I outgrow shoujo now that I'm older? Well, as I just mentioned, I watched several shoujo anime this past year. However, you could make the argument that it was nostalgia that compelled me to watch them. They were all older shows after all. I may just want an older color of shoujo that no longer exists. Watching older shows is like trapping yourself in a time capsule, where everything is in limbo and nothing can go wrong, which can be comforting when the present feels uncertain. I won't lie to you, that is part of the reason why I watch older anime. But it's still not quite the full story. I'm happy to report that I have finally cracked the code. I know where a lot of shoujo fans disappear to. To answer this mystery, let me ask a question. What do you do when you want a product that's no longer readily available? Well, most likely, you'll go somewhere else to find what you want. And that's exactly what I and many other shoujo fans have done. "2017 was around the time I started watching less anime. And looking back at my watch history, there seems to be a very clear correlation. The less time I spent watching anime, the more time I spent reading webtoons and watching K-dramas. For those of you who aren't familiar, Webtoon is a Korean webcomic hosting site. It's taken off quite a bit internationally, and creators from all over the world use it to publish their work. It's created some very big titles, including some that have made their way over to the anime sphere. Unless you yourself are a Webtoon user, you're probably not aware of this. But a lot of the series that perform the best and are marketed over the front page are webtoons that cater to female audiences. And the art styles of the most popular series are often very reminiscent of shoujo as well. This success is not to be overlooked. Not only are the numbers pretty insane on a lot of these webtoons, but many of these series get adapted into Korean dramas. And this leads back to another place fans like me have turned to get their shoujo fix. I kinda stopped watching anime for a while, and at first I told myself that it was because I didn't have the time anymore. Yet somehow I was finishing 14 to 20 episode romance and slice of life K-dramas where each episode is an hour long with no issue whatsoever. Clearly the dramas are a bigger time sink, so I couldn't tell myself I stopped watching anime because of the time investment anymore. I didn't realize it at the time, but there was a clear answer as to why I had made the switch. Newer anime wasn't giving me what I wanted, and I had already watched a good chunk of the classic shoujo series out there, so to get the kind of entertainment I wanted, I shifted over to webtoon and K-dramas instead. Somehow I didn't piece this together until very recently. It happened when I was reading the comments on the videos I previously mentioned about the decline of shoujo. Several highly liked comments said pretty much the same thing, that they had moved to webtoon and K-dramas because of the lack of new shoujo anime. And as much as I love reading an engaging webtoon or watching a fluffy romantic K-drama, this is kinda sad. There is very clearly still a market for people who want new shoujo anime. Manga sales for shoujo are as high as ever, yet Japan has been adapting fewer and fewer series, likely because of a lack of faith that they'll perform well. And there could be some truth to that. Anime is expensive, so I can understand wanting to be cautious. It is possible that shoujo series may underperform in comparison to what's popular now. However, I think the main issue is a marketing problem, not a lack of potential audience. Series that focus on romance and cater to female audiences are insanely popular. Just scrolling through Webtoon will tell you that much. And it's not just the webtoons themselves either. If you've only just discovered K-dramas recently through breakout series like Squid Game, then you'd probably expect only grittier and violent series to do well. But that's not quite the case. While not many series have garnered as much global appeal, including the people who don't regularly watch K-dramas, the romance genre is still very alive and well in Korea. A lot of the series that trended on a national level were in the romance category. Furthermore, a considerable chunk of the best performing K-dramas on Netflix were in the romance category. Considering that, we can assume that K-dramas focusing on romance do perform well internationally too. So, why all the focus on webtoon and K-dramas? Isn't this a video about shoujo anime? Well, looking at how well series targeting female demographics do in other markets, clearly there's still a huge demand for series reminiscent of shoujo anime. Yet, for whatever reason, we're seeing less and less shoujo anime as the years go by. But what about shoujo manga? I've been purposely skirting around it up until this point. While there is an undeniable shortage of new shoujo anime to enjoy, the same cannot be said for shoujo manga, and in fact, that appears to be yet another place anime fans retreat to when newer anime no longer interests them. Shoujo manga is still booming and doing as great as ever. It's part of what transforms so many anime viewers into manga readers. However, that hasn't been the case for me personally. I used to read shoujo manga here and there when I was younger, But now that I'm older, I really would like to be able to support manga properly. But for shoujo manga at least, that's very difficult for me to do. Not only are there very limited translations, including translations that have stopped printing entirely due to licensing, but I also find shoujo manga extremely inaccessible when compared to me just opening up Webtoon on my phone, or whatever device I have. I've had trouble finding sites or apps that are easy to use and host a huge variety of shoujo. The only places that come close charge the same amount that you would pay for a physical copy. And I'm not criticizing the business model at all, since I have no idea what the finances are like in the digital manga field. But I personally cannot afford to pay a retail price for each individual volume of manga I want to read. It's probably not an issue for extremely dedicated manga readers with some extra pocket change. But currently, any money I have left over from expenses goes towards music gear, which adds up fast, and I personally can't justify using that money for manga instead. This is admittedly more of a personal problem, but as I mentioned before, I find Webtoon and Kdramas much more accessible. But to be clear, I'm not saying that digital manga should be free. I'm not that naive. I know companies need to make money, and obviously the creators as well. However, I think it would be a lot easier for a lot of fans if there was a subscription-based paying model for digital manga. And yes, there are some services that do this, but they don't have what I want to read. If there was a good subscription-based service for shoujo manga, including older titles, I would gladly pay in a heartbeat. But as far as I'm aware, there isn't. Which is why I didn't make the jump from shoujo anime to manga. The supply isn't readily available internationally. And as I am now, I don't want to spend the majority of my spending money on manga alone. The price of one manga volume is something that I could use to pay for Netflix or some other service that give me what I want. Hence why I ended up using Webtoon instead. So long as the series is ongoing, you don't need to pay anything unless you want to skip ahead. And most of the webcomics I read on there are very clearly shoujo inspired, so it scratches that itch that I've been longing for. If you've made it this far in the video, thanks for watching. But you may also be wondering, so what? Who cares if there's less shoujo anime? Clearly the audience has moved on, whether it be shoujo manga, webtoon, K-dramas, or a mixture of the three. What's the problem? The issue isn't likely to really faze anyone who didn't grow up watching shoujo like I did. After all, there's still plenty of new exciting anime coming out. And I'll admit, I have a bias here since I'm personally attached to what shoujo has to offer. However, I do think that the absence of new shoujo is having an impact on anime as a whole. First off, it's likely adding to the homogeny that anime fans have been complaining about lately. A lot of shows coming out feel very similar. Whether it's true or not is another story, and I can't really comment since I haven't seen any of the new stuff. However, part of this perceived sameness can easily be contributed towards most new anime targeting a single demographic. There'd be more variety if there was more shows targeting female audiences as well. Which leads into another impact from the lack of new shoujo anime. It feels like series targeting girls and women are being put on the back burner. I don't really believe in something only being for one gender. That's silly to me. There are things we can all universally like as humans of this earth. However, the more studios steer away from marketing towards specific genders, the more femininity seems to get erased in media. There's nothing inherently wrong with series chock full of pink frills, heart-pounding romance, and tons of pretty people. Just like there's nothing wrong with series full of muscly heroes, cool weapons, and heart-racing action. Each deserves their own place to shine, and you don't need to be any type of particular person to enjoy either. I like both, and always have. As a little girl, not only did I love Barbie, Winx Club, and Sailor Moon, but I was also obsessed with Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and action movies. As funny as it may seem, I absolutely idolized Ash's character from the Evil Dead series as a little girl. Of course, the only film I could stomach was Army of Darkness, but still, it's a film that is unabashedly stereotypically masculine and macho to an extreme degree, and it's always been one of my favorites. But regardless of the fact that I like things that are both stereotypically masculine and feminine, I do not agree with erasing girly products. This seems to be the general consensus on how to combat gendered products, but that's basically forcing everyone to conform to what was formerly labeled as traditionally masculine. That was a big gripe that a lot of fans seem to have about Netflix's Winx Club adaptation. It refused to acknowledge the femininity that was laden in the show originally. I have nothing against media that tries to target multiple demographics, but I don't like the way things have been going recently. I just can't agree with the belief that femininity is inherently a bad thing. Audiences deserve variety, and it's not like it's just girls who like feminine things either. So with all that said, I really do find it sad how little anime has been made recently that specifically has female audiences in mind. As I already said, I don't have a problem with making products for everybody, but with that same ideology, there could also be series that resonate with specific audiences. I want my girly shows too, and I can guarantee you that I'm not alone. And there you have it. The reason why I don't watch anime is because female audiences aren't seen as a desired market anymore. Even though the demand for shoujo is still booming today, it's not that women outgrow anime outgrows them. I didn't mean to get this glum and ranty towards the end here, but I still stand by what I said. I'm genuinely upset that I can't look forward to new anime the way I used to. But luckily I can always find what I'm looking for elsewhere. It's just unfortunate that so many people behind animation, not just anime, seem to think that the female audience outgrows their works, when in reality, animation stops caring about them, not the other way around. I think that's about all I have to say on the topic. What do you guys think? Do you agree with what I said, or is your experience different? Either way, feel free to share. I'm curious to see how you guys feel about this subject. If you'd like to support the channel, then please consider donating to my Ko-fi page. Or if you'd rather do so directly, you can leave a super thanks by clicking the heart icon beneath the video. Besides donations, watching, liking, and commenting helps me out a lot too. And if you'd like to join me on the ride to come, then please subscribe so you won't miss out on new videos. Thanks for watching. Times can be tough, so don't forget to keep a little magic in your life. Till next time, guys. Bye.